All right, we'll go ahead and get started. People who are trickling in can continue to trickle in throughout the webinar. And as a note, this is going to be recorded. So we'll send out a recording and a follow-up email. We'll make sure we'll throw it up on our blog at oozlemedia.com/blog, and make sure that anybody who may miss the first part of this is able to watch it afterwards. Really excited. A little bit about myself. Like I said, I'm the director of accounts at Oozle Media. I'm about a week away from hitting my 4-year mark here. So I've probably worked with a lot of the schools that are tuning in today, or you've interacted with me in emails or elsewhere. And for those of you that haven't worked with me before, I look forward to the opportunity to maybe work closer with your business or your school in the future. Today's webinar I'm really excited about. It's a little bit more basic maybe than some of the webinars that we've done throughout the year. I know we've done 20 some odd webinars this year, ranging from stuff to do through COVID and whatnot, but this one is going a little bit more into the basics of general marketing and marketing terminology, terms that you may have heard your agency use or terms that we've used on calls, and kind of stems from a question that I got from a longtime client on one of my calls. So really excited to kind of set the record straight, set the expectations, make them a little bit more clear on what you might be getting yourself into and working with an agency, and answering some questions that you as either a long-term client or a business that's looking to work with us, or just a business that's interested in this topic, hoping to connect some dots for you on today's webinar. And to jump right in, I know one of the biggest things that's the biggest barrier to entry when talking about marketing is the insane amount of marketing terms, the insane amount of abbreviations, acronyms and whatnot, SEO, CPL, CPM, SEM, WYSIWYG, CRO, all these other terms, and impression, what's the difference between impression and reach, what's top of funnel, what's bottom of the funnel. It just gets so overwhelming. And I know from working with clients and doing so many reports calls over the years, that sometimes we just throw those words out because they're everyday vernacular for us, and never really dive into the details of what some of those mean. And it can get frustrating. It can get annoying when there's the assumption that you know what those all mean. So like I said, I want to go back to square one. I want to start from the very beginning and talk about the difference of search engine optimization, which is SEO, or pay-per-click, which is PPC, social ads, what those mean, what you can expect from them. And we'll be diving into some of the associated abbreviations and acronyms, and really just talking about what you can expect from some of those products or strategies or what have you. Talk about how they work together to help one another. We'll go over a saying that you've probably heard us use before: the rising tide lifts all boats. And yeah, hopefully just get to learn a little bit more about marketing today. So I'm really excited. And since leads are what eventually turn into business or money in your pocket, that's really where I want to start. Is what is a lead? And I know that sounds super stupid because it's such a basic question, but believe it or not, a lead can mean different things to different people, and even different agencies given access to the same data set could report on different numbers from the same data. So to truly answer this question, you'll need to meet with your specific agency and make sure that you're on the same page on what they are counting. To put it simply, a lead for most businesses should be like a unique contact, be that like a name or a phone number or an email address, anything that allows you to get in touch with that point of contact. If you're B2B, a business to business company, that contact information might just be the information of the company that wants you to reach out to them. For B2C, business to consumer, business to customer, it's probably the name of a specific individual. And so those names are the leads that should be reported, and they should be unique names or contact numbers that you got within the time frame that you're reporting on. So for reporting on leads for last month, it should be those unique leads, those unique names that build up that number, if that makes sense. And we'll dive into that a little bit later here in a second. But these should line up roughly with your CRM, which is another abbreviation, customer relationship management is largely what that stands for, but where your leads are going in on your end, what your sales or what your admissions team might be using to track the leads and the sales cycle, whether they enroll or whether they purchase. You're probably using a CRM to track all that. The numbers that you have in the CRM should roughly line up with the numbers that your agency is reporting. And to that end, you should expect your agency to be scrubbing for duplicates, any test leads. We as an agency will put through a lot of test leads when we're trying out new things or we're launching a new campaign. We don't want to count those as leads, even though they may show up in your CRM. And anything that's obviously spammy or not interested in the product of the business or the business. So like we'll see a lot of contact information that comes through, and it's just leads that are like, we notice your business needs this product, reach out to us. It's like more of a sales pitch coming through one of your forms on your website. It would be disingenuous to count that as a lead, because that individual's never going to turn into business. In fact, they're hoping you'll turn into their business. So again, you want to be clear on what your agency is reporting and if they're doing those things, or they're just exporting all of those names from the back end and counting them blanket, without scrubbing them. Or even maybe more egregious would just be counting pixel fires, which we'll go over a little bit later, and not even exporting names at all. So for example, just to use an example to kind of talk about more what a lead is, and sorry, I know we've been on this slide for a while. We'll move on in just a second, but we work with a lot of beauty schools specifically, and they're a good example of business that would be getting different types of lead inquiries through their website. So you've got the leads who might be interested in going to school, becoming students. As the marketing agency, generally that's what we're trying to get. We're trying to grow their schools by getting more students. But these beauty schools also have the salon side, the service side. So people might be filling out a form to request information on how to get their hair cut and colored, or a service like a facial or a massage, depending on the programs that the beauty school offers. Now, if we've been hired by the beauty school to drive enrollments, it would be disingenuous for us to count any of those salon inquiries into the total number of leads. That's just it's not what we've been hired to grow, and it misrepresents the growth that the company may or may not be experiencing, or the school may or may not be experiencing. So really defining what that lead is, what your agency is counting, like I said, sounds basic and we're starting from the beginning, but it can be really, really important, because you'd hate to get 6 months down the road and find out you thought you were doing really good trusting the agency's reports, but come to look at your revenue, come to look at internal reporting from your sales team or your admissions team, and it doesn't line up. It's going to be a hard pill to swallow. So set straight what a lead is, and then just to continue along those lines. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. We kind of get into a point where it gets really messy with the types of leads that are coming in, right? So, for example, you can count form fills from Instagram DMs. Is that a lead? Facebook Messenger inquiries, could those be leads? Phone calls, walk-ins, paid ad landing pages. They're all different forms of leads, right? Or all different sources of leads, I should say. And each of these has different sources for reporting. So if you're running ads on Google, then you can see the number of conversions in their platform. And they track this through a tracking pixel, which I mentioned earlier, which is loaded. And as you hit certain goals, like for example, if you go to a form, you fill out a form and you get redirected to a thank you page, a page that says, thank you so much for filling out the form. We'll be in touch. There's a pixel on that page that's looking for any hits to that specific thank you page, and it will say, okay, they came through Google Ads, it fires, and it will report back to us in Google that you just got a lead. And there's a lot of places where that can go wrong, and again, we'll dive into that. But anything could go wrong with a pixel depending on the device, the browser that the user's using, their internet speeds, even your hosting for your website. The pixel fire that's counting conversions, it could be way off from reality, from the true number of names. I could sit there and hit refresh over and over again, and Google might tell me that I just got 10 leads, but it's really just one me. if that makes sense. So the number with the pixels is almost always higher. And many agencies are happy to report that. It's easier for them. They don't have to scrub. They just throw the number in. In many cases, it can be automated into a report. And, they could say you got 57 conversions, but, in my experience, that might only be 35 actual unique names in your CRM. So I guess to that end, make sure that you're really clear and don't let your agency take advantage of you like that. Make sure that you're looking and comparing their numbers, asking where they got them and comparing them to what you have. But at the same time, like I do want to just clarify, cut your agency some slack. They might have a name on their list attributed as a PPC lead, but you have them marked as a walk-in. And it's possible that that lead is both. And an agency doesn't have control over things like walk-ins, or sometimes if you're not doing call tracking, we wouldn't even be able to track like phone calls as a lead. So there might be an overlap as well. And the bottom line, I guess what I'm trying to get to is that the agency should have very sound logic behind the lead numbers they report, and they should be able to back it up. So for example, for us, for form fills, we require our account managers to be able to produce a list of names that match the count they give to clients. In some cases, we even send this list to clients for their team to match up with their CRMs. And we can do that for any client that's on the call that wants that sent over. Just ask your account manager. But leads, just to put a cap on this conversation for the leads portion, are unique individual prospects that you can communicate with using the information that they gave you. So again, unique individuals. And this brings us to talking about how much your leads are costing you, right? Your another abbreviation here, the CPL, your cost per lead. And this will really vary industry to industry, what your actual cost per lead, what you're paying per lead is, and will vary from market to market and even product to product, or, if you're a school, program to program. It's really important to look at your all-in cost per lead, which I'll show you an example of how to calculate. This would be like using your marketing spend on, say, Facebook or Google, plus the management fee that you pay to your agency, because this is going to help you with your business finances in determining ROAS, which is ROAS, return on ad spend. But you'll need to understand the cost per lead that you're getting from just the platform that you're spending money on as well to calculate some averages. So to jump into like a little example here, if you were to spend $1,500 a month on Google and you were to pay your agency $500 to manage those fees. So again, your agency isn't seeing that $1,500. That's going straight to Google to place your ad. But where it's being placed, the strategy, the management, your agency is doing that. You're paying them $500. Your all-in cost to be running this pay-per-click, this PPC, this Google Ads budget, they're all interchangeable there, would be $2,000, right? If they got you 37 leads in a month, then your all-in cost per lead would be that $2,000 that you're spending divided by those 37 leads, which yields a $54.05 per lead that you're paying. And again, from here on your end, an agency might not know these numbers unless you share them with them. You can calculate some really cool stuff. So you can say, okay, I know that on average, 10% of my leads, they end up becoming customers. They end up spending money. So, of 37, 10% might be 3 to 4 leads that become actual enrollments in your program, or they might become actual sales. You can say, okay, for an enrollment, if you're a school, I know that on average, I'm getting $1,500 or $3,000 in profit off of the top, whatever that number is. And you can times that number and you can do some cool return on ad spend and see if you're spending too much on leads, if you need to reevaluate your budget and your marketing budget, or if you're getting enough to reinvest more into marketing up that budget. And you can do some cool math that way, kind of working backwards from, okay, so if I want 10 enrollments next month, and I know I've got a 10% enrollment rate, I've got to get X number of leads. That means that at this cost per lead, I'm going to need a budget of Y, and you can really budget strategically instead of just throwing money at a wall and seeing what sticks, if that makes sense. And then to use an example where we're just looking at your Google Ads budget, there is merit in not calculating in your management fee. You would just take that $1,500, divide it by the lead, same exact calculation as before. We're just not including that $500 management fee, right? for a $40.54 per lead cost. And the reason why this would make sense to do is because like for us as an agency, there's a lot of different management fees out there based on your budget. And so those management fees would be skewing actual industry data. If we want to find out how much a cosmetology lead is nationwide or in certain market sizes, we want to see based off of just the budget. That way we can come back to you and say, okay, on average, our clients are seeing a $125 cost per lead for cosmetology leads, and they're seeing a $75 cost per lead for aesthetics leads or skincare leads or whatever. We can get really good industry insight, so we can help you strategically budget a good budget for social or a good budget for Google, if that makes sense. So and on your end as well, it helps you make some comparisons about where you need to be. You can kind of calculate if you're pushing too hard or if you need to dial back on the budget. You can also use this when comparing agencies. So if you're looking at maybe switching from one agency to another, you can ask them, what they're seeing on average, or you can compare them when you make that switch. Okay, my old agency, I had a different management fee. Say my old agency charged me $800. This new agency charges me $500. To get a true comparison about the cost per lead and the quality of leads I'm getting, I would need to look at just what I'm spending on Google, if that makes sense. Okay, so now let's take a look at the different places a lead can come from. Being a digital marketing agency, I'm going to disregard what we call like traditional media leads, just for the sake of this discussion. So those would be walk-in leads, radio ads, TV commercials, or print ads such as mailers or yellow pages listings. But really all of those would have like a more or less a paid or organic version. We will kind of, I think by the time we have this conversation about the difference between paid versus organic, you'll be able to apply that to traditional media. So you've got two types of leads, whether you're talking traditional or otherwise, and those are the paid or organic that you can see here on the screen. And the inspiration, actually, I kind of mentioned this earlier for today's webinar, was from an established client who asked me and when I say established, I mean, we've been working with them for a couple of years now, and asked me on a reports call what the difference between a paid and organic lead is. And we report on that every single month. And I was so grateful that they weren't embarrassed to ask. I don't think anyone should have been, but that's something that if you're hearing every single month for a year and a half, 2 years, I could see the trepidation and maybe wanting to ask. And so it was awesome to be able to go over that with a client. And I realized I'm sure that there's people out there that have similar questions, but are afraid to ask them, aren't asking those questions, and they're just kind of going off in the dark there. So again, that was kind of the inspiration for today's webinar, and I'm hoping that we can connect some of those dots. So to put it simply, a paid lead is a lead that comes through a source where you paid to be seen. This could be an ad on Google. You paid to put an ad there, someone sees it, they click on it, they give you their information, and boom, you just got a paid lead. And this could be said for even an ad on Facebook, or, I said I wasn't going to mention them, but like a TV commercial where someone calls a call tracking number associated with the TV campaign, and you can track your paid leads back to where you're paying to be seen. And then on the flip side, an organic lead would be someone who stumbles across it naturally. Maybe they drove by your store, they're curious, so they walk in, or they Google restoration company near me, and your business ranks well because of positive ratings and good content, and they click the link, did some reading, and eventually they became a lead that you could contact. Or like a recommendation from a friend would be organic. You didn't pay for that recommendation from somebody to say, hey, I went to the store, and yada yada yada. So organic leads, they can still be tracked, they can still be measured. You should still be investing in ways to get more eyeballs on your brand through organic, like I said, getting better reputation, putting out good content. But you don't require necessarily a set budget to acquire organic leads each month, where paid ads, you should be invested in your organic marketing. So you should have, paid ads you should be invested in organic, but paid ads are more direct comparison. And we'll talk about that comparison in just a second. So to show you an example, this is, I Googled plumber near me, And if somebody were to Google plumber near me and click on this ad right here, fill out a form, request that, Whipple Plumbing, it looks like here, request that Whipple Plumbing gets in touch with them, that's a paid lead. They paid to be here. They paid to be seen. I clicked on that. I converted right then and there. They just got a paid lead. Organically, Valley Plumbing right here is ranking in first spot for plumber near me. That could be because they're the closest physically to my area. It could be because they have a good reputation or they have good content. Probably a combination of all those things. And if I were to click on this, they didn't pay for this per se to be here. This came up because it matches the search term, what Google thinks is matching the best. And if I were to click here, do some research, become a lead now or in the future, that would become an organic lead. So again, these could be even the same business. Sometimes you can Google for a very specific company. Let's say I Googled Whipple Plumbing. I would probably still get an ad for Whipple Plumbing, but I could also click on an organic website, URL here that would be ranking for their name. It would be what we'd call a branded search term because I search for their brand name, and I could click on either one. And depending on which one I click on is going to determine what your agency is reporting to you. So if I clicked on this one, it would be organic. If I clicked on this one and converted, it would be a paid lead, if that makes sense. And the same can be said for Facebook. So here's just an example. Volkswagen, you see this little sponsored here. They paid to show up in my feed. They have these little calls to action where I can click to learn more, go to a landing page on their website, fill out a form, and they hope I buy a car from them, right? Or you can go organic where they just posted this to their page. And unless I'm a follower of their page or like it, I probably won't see it. But there's also benefits to posting organically that may not be immediately clear. So you can see what they've done with this post talking about their new electric SUV is they've pinned it. So it's actually back from September, but it's pinned as the first thing you'll see if you visit their page. And organically speaking, you can see here the paid ad, 1 like, 1 heart. Over here, this organic post, because they have a big following already, 1.2 thousand interactions here, likes, hearts, shocked emojis, 376 comments, and 853 shares. They didn't pay a cent for those shares. This wasn't a ad that they ran. This is the community that they've invested on the organic side in building has shared. And now whoever these people are that have shared it, these 853 individuals, their network has seen it. So the amount of impressions, the number of times that this post has been seen, probably in the millions across all that network. Anytime you comment on something, oftentimes, your network will also see that. And again, they just had their social media specialist post this and let the community run wild with it. Where me, who may not be a part of that community, which is who they're trying to reach out to with their ads, they're paying to get in front of extra people outside of those people that they've built up organically. So there's definitely merit for both. And we'll talk about this, but there's not really a reason why you should be doing just paid or just organic. You should really be building both. But these are driving new eyeballs, fresh people who may not be familiar or even considering Volkswagen might now be, where people who are already fans that they've built up are now interacting in something cool. And you can do the same thing with your business. If you build up a good audience, anytime you post a promotion or anything, that's a free audience that you can put that out to and potentially get them in the door, as opposed to having to pay to get a new audience in. So again, similar thing on Google, similar thing on Facebook. Organically outside of the building, like I said, someone driving past your building might be also organic. Someone who comes in because they saw a billboard might be considered paid. So you can get into that traditional media, like I said. And then to talk about the different, to continue the conversation about paid versus organic leads, there is a third, less often mentioned type of lead. And that's this little overlap between paid leads and organic leads called assisted leads. These can be some of the most misunderstood leads from both the business and agency side. Assisted leads are more or less organic leads that have interacted with your paid ads in some way, but converted at a later time. So, in the example from the paid leads, let's say you paid for an ad on Google, you paid to be here, and I click on it. and I don't fill out a form. I don't become a lead. I click on it and I leave the page, and I decide maybe at that time that Whipple plumbing isn't for me. But let's say my plumbing situation becomes more dire and I come back in a couple of days or in a couple of weeks and I find them organically down here and I convert. Who gets credit for that? I found out about Whipple through this ad, but maybe I searched for Whipple 3 weeks from now and clicked on them organically. Is that an organic lead? Is that a paid lead? Well, to be honest, it would be an organic lead probably on a report from us from Oozle, but we would really call that an assisted lead. And we'll talk about how that works a little bit more. So on the surface, I'll have no way of knowing that a person who came through organically may have been an assisted lead. There's no like marker or anything. Usually the way I can differentiate a paid lead versus an organic lead outside of just seeing what landing page they came in through, because we often use landing pages that are specific to paid campaigns, is through a UTM code. Now this UTM code, that's another abbreviation. It stands for Urchin Tracking Module. And I would say most people at Oozle probably couldn't even tell you that. It's an abbreviation that no one uses and you don't need to remember it. It's just referred to as a UTM code. And this UTM code is this long string you'll sometimes see after you're done, after you click on an ad. So I put here a samplebeautyschool.com in my example. This would be the URL to the landing page that the ad takes me. It took me to their domain /request-info. Google ads or Facebook, in this example, it's Google. You can see here, we'll talk about that. They've attached this UTM code here. And the UTM will tell me, and also the pixel, the reporting platform in the back end of Google. So when I go to Google Ads to look at your report from them, they're using this data to differentiate how you came through. So you'll see the source is Google. The medium is CPC, which is cost per click. That's interchangeable for the sake of this conversation with PPC, which is pay per click. So you have cost per click and pay per click. You've got the campaign. So for example, it looks like whoever was running this Google Ads, we'll say it was Oozle, was running it under a beauty terms. And that term that I searched for, that keyword that brought me to this ad was beauty school near me. And then they'll attach a Google Click ID. That's GCLID right there, the Google Click ID, which in a really simple term is just attaching that click to an individual in that browser. And that click, the cookie that it's going to store, the way that that's being cached, it will know if you come back within a certain amount of time and convert. So again, just as a little, that was kind of an aside to talking about assisted leads. Through the use of UTM codes or cookies and other tracking tools, the platform knows that you interacted with an ad and they want credit. So you can change the window for these, but the standard way that they're taking credit for like a UTM code or someone who interacted with a paid ad and then came back and converted organically later is either 28 days within interacting with the ad, but then coming back, or 30 days. And again, you can kind of change those or shorten those depending on the report that you would like to see. But the reason for this is really, this is just going back to Google's and Facebook's need to get credit in a world where people mostly switched over to like last click attribution. So everybody was just putting money into whatever they were saying was the last place that someone converted. So again, if I just said that this came in from organic because there was no UTM code, no way for me to identify that name as interacting with an ad, it would be very easy for me to say, maybe as a business owner, I don't want to spend money on Google anymore because I'm getting enough leads, or I'm getting the majority of my leads are coming from organic. And then you stop spending money on Google and organic goes down and you start saying, what the heck? Like, where is this coming from? So to make that clear, to kind of make the image a little clearer, they started separating those out. So on Facebook, they'll report those explicitly as assisted leads. Hey, we saw that of X number of people that interacted with leads within 28 or within ads within 28 days. Here's the number of people we see that came back and converted organically, and they'll just call it flat out an assisted lead. On Google, this might appear in the form of a fraction of a conversion. So if you were looking at a report directly from Google Ads, you would see something weird like 28.5 conversions, for example. And that's weird, because how do you get half of a conversion? Is that like half of the first name, half the last name? No, it just means that they know that you came in, you didn't directly convert that first time, so they don't feel comfortable taking full credit, but they want you to know that there were conversions that came through. So it gets a little confusing, and this is kind of where that messy middle shows up, where, like, for example, for the car buyer's journey, how many times does someone, when you're looking to purchase a car, do you jump from brand to brand and interact and research for a product and maybe look across a ton of different platforms? And this is where we use that term that I used at the beginning of this webinar, that rising tide lifts all boats. You may not have realized that what you were doing on PPC was affecting organic, or what you were doing on your social ads, the ads you're running on Facebook, Instagram, etc., were affecting even your paid ads or whatever. You could be a business that runs PPC ads and you're not running any social ads, but when you invest in social ads, you don't get direct leads there, but you see that your CPL, for example, goes down on PPC. That's that rising tide lifting all boats. You're still benefiting in general as a business from your broad investments across the board. And so I guess this is a super long roundabout way of saying, be careful about making snap judgment calls on what is and isn't working, because you don't know how someplace that you're investing money in that maybe isn't obviously overperforming or performing well, how it's affecting your other avenues positively. So to see what this would look like on a report, you'll get a report from us and you'll say, like, you got 15 leads, you got PPC, 2 PPC leads, 3 social ads leads. I'm just spitballing low numbers here for easy math, but that 15 plus 2 plus 3 equals 20. Those 8 assisted leads here, those are showing up somewhere in this data. So I can't say that you had 28 leads, because I wouldn't have in the back end, even though if I took the numbers from the platforms, I would have 28 conversions. When I export it from the back end of your website, there would only be 20 names there. And that's because these assisted leads that are being reported, maybe social only got you 3 leads, but of these organic, 15 of them, 8 of them were people that interacted with your social ads first, or that could be the same said for PPC. So it's kind of a confusing concept, even now after we've spent 10, 15 minutes talking about assisted leads, but that's how it works. So when I'm reporting, I will tell you the number of assisted leads that you got, but it won't be the number of names per se. The number of names is still the organic direct, the PPC direct, the social direct, that add up to 20. And so if you saw this report, you would have 20 specific leads. Okay. Let's move on from that. Let's talk about your website. So when we report on leads, when we talk about websites, or when we talk about where leads could come from or anything, kind of a saying that we use is all roads lead to Rome. And Rome in this case is your website. So it doesn't matter if you're running email campaigns, or you're blogging and posting those blogs on social, or you're doing stuff on social media, public relations, PPC. Any of these avenues are almost, even billboards, to go back to the traditional media I said I wasn't going to mention, even billboards are going to mention your website usually. So you're sending everyone back. I can't think of something more important for a business to have in the modern age than a website. It is just where people find out about you. It is where people do their research, and it is so important. And so, your site needs to look good. It needs to perform in a number of ways. And this is where a lot of different things like SEO or CRO, that's search engine optimization, or conversion rate optimization, come up. And you need those things, right? You need your website to do those. So CRO, conversion rate optimization, that would mean people who go to your website have a high likelihood of filling out a form, because you've taken things in the design cues and the places where you put the forms, or psychological things like the colors you've used will get visitors to be more likely to fill out a form and become a lead. it has to be mobile friendly. It needs to load fast. It needs to be easy to read and accessible to users with disabilities, and easy to read for bots and crawlers that Google uses to identify the information you're providing on your website. That's part of that search engine optimization that you would be doing. I think too often people design a site with someone who knows how to build something flashy or something who looks really cool and is design heavy. But because the firm that did the website doesn't understand SEO, they're building something that hurts long-term marketing for the company, despite, again, looking great. It's not doing all those other things that I mentioned. And, if it sounds like a lot, if you're feeling overwhelmed about what your website needs to perform well, to be frank, I guess you should. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This building a good website that performs well from all avenues cannot be done in a day or even a month. That's why we tell people to invest not just in the paid ads, but that organic, what we would call on our end is like social SEO. It's not even like a time or money situation, though. It really is a time and money situation, time and money investment, which can be frustrating. I get that. It can be really frustrating for clients. We've had clients join and then quit right away because they don't like the wait or they don't understand it. And we try to make it really clear on our website what our method is. We take an analysis and planning approach right from the beginning. And we go through audits and we take the action items from these audits and we move into setup and cleanup. And this is just literally getting your business to a point where we have a slate to work with. To use an analogy, I'm sure some of you on this call have on this webinar have heard before. The speedboat analogy is what we like to call this. So imagine that you're coming to us with a speedboat, and the goal is to get that speedboat going as fast as possible. What we like to do first is make sure that your engine is ready and that you don't have it, you've got fuel in the tank. We got to check all those things. And we got to look for potential anchors that have been cast over the side and are keeping us in place, because plenty of agencies can come and do the fun, shiny stuff, those video campaigns, the graphics and everything, and put those out there. And that would be the equivalent of just sitting down on the boat and putting the pedal to the metal, so to speak, taking that throttle and pushing it all the way forward. And that's great. That's awesome. The problem is you could get a lot more bang for your buck making sure you don't have any anchors under there. So that way, when you do put those awesome graphics out there, you do put those awesome campaigns out there, that throttle's doing something for you. You're going faster. And again, whether speed was the goal in the first place, it just doesn't make sense to jump right to the throttle before checking everything out. So that's that analysis and planning. That's that setup and cleanup. That's that frustrating part that you have to have some patience for. And in rare cases, I've seen just these two steps take up to 10 months. Usually it's around the first couple of months. I'd say at a minimum after the audits are done. It's that first 3 months of cutting off those anchors from the bottom, letting those anchors loose. Yeah, like I said, it's a time and money. You're investing in those things being done, and you're taking the time to do it. And even if you don't have any anchors, we want to make sure that we've got good benchmarks before we move into phase 3. Phase 3 is that telling your story. This can be content in the form of monthly blogs. It can be or multiple monthly blogs. It can be making sure that your homepage content, program or product page content, making sure that all of that is solid, making sure you've got videos and other content that can be used on social media platforms, not just your website, but that content is leading people back to your website, if that makes sense. But this stage can really go on forever, and it should, because the markets change, right? Who could have anticipated everything that happened in 2020? Who was writing content about what to do in the event of a pandemic in August 2019 or July 2019? No one, right? So even if you're past the setup and cleanup, or even if you're onto the amplifying your message page, you should still be telling your story at every turn and every opportunity you get, making sure that content stays fresh and consistent. And that's going to have some SEO implications that are going to help you rank well long-term anyways. But once you've got that story in place, then we're ready to build and take that audience. Once we feel like we've got the audience that we're talking to, we're addressing their concerns, we can start to build that audience even bigger in phase 4, which is amplifying your message. You might be taking those blogs we wrote and putting money behind them on social media, running literal just blog posts as brand awareness campaign ads on social media. It's amplifying the message. And now there's two big things to note here. The first is that I know this sounds super daunting, and don't think that because the first phases aren't the end goal of where you need to be, that they're not helping you get better results. I think that would be a big fallacy to believe in, because every stage here is helping build results. It's structured in a way that's going to increase results with every little thing that we do, but it's kind of like a snowball, right? So for most clients, we start off with a little snowball and we just start rolling it. Another blog is another push. Or another start date graphic or whatever, what have you. It's just a little push that's growing that snowball. And when we're reporting, at the very beginning, month over month, the growth between months isn't going to be that impressive. In fact, seasonality could be that some months you've got negative growth, going in from like a new year high down to that like pre-summer slump. That snowball is changing and evolving a little bit in ways that aren't always the most exciting. But once you start comparing it year over year and you see how small that snowball was last year and how big it is this year, then you can really start to grow an appreciation for that long-term investment you're making on the organic side of things. And it gets interesting. I know that if we're looking at paid ads, it's a little bit differently. It's not quite the snowball analogy, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But to give you an idea of what that snowball is kind of looking like, on average, we took a bunch of the schools and a bunch of the clients that we work with, and we averaged out organic leads from January 2019 and went 6 months deep. And they had seen a 12.7% increase in leads from January to, 6 months into the year. After 12 months, if you look January 2019 to January 2020, which is the time frame we took here for this, they had seen a 37.86% increase in leads month over month, year over year. So again, it's worth the wait. And you might be looking and seeing like, oh, in 6 months we've seen growth, but a 10, 12% growth in 6 months. I've invested at this point tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on your budget. 10% growth in 6 months, that's not awesome. But imagine almost 40% growth in leads year over year. And if you're converting at 10% of those leads turn into business for you, you can do the math pretty easily and see in just a year what that is. And this is strictly organic leads. This isn't even talking about PPC. If you want to look at Google Ads leads after 12 months or year over year, even with no change in budget, you're not even spending that much more, or you're not spending more in January 2020 than you were in 2019. You're seeing a 28.5% increase in PPC leads on top of that 37.8% organic increase. So again, patience is a virtue is what I'll say there. It can feel slow, but it's definitely worth the wait and worth the investment. You just have to understand that, right? And that can be really hard to understand that, especially when you're looking short term. And a year is a long time to ask a business to wait. And I definitely understand that. That's why I'm trying to help kind of set those expectations right now. So this is a great segue looking at these paid ads leads after 12 months to kind of talk about the paid ad side of things. And I talked a little bit about how organic can be more like a snowball, but paid ads can really be a lot of things. It can take a lot of forms. I like to compare it more to like a faucet, where you put money behind something. That's like turning on the faucet, and leads start coming out proportional to the size of the budget, like pretty immediately. It might take a couple weeks ramp up for some Google to do its thing or Facebook to do its thing to find the right audience and kind of calibrate a little bit. But after a couple weeks, by and large, you put money behind it proportional to the spend you're putting in, leads start coming out immediately. And it's a great short term, to go back to that our method page, it's a great short term solution while we're working on the organic side of the analysis and planning to supplement those leads by putting a strong paid budget behind there. Basically immediately jump to amplifying your message while we're building to a better story and a better message, right? which might be confusing. We can talk about that, maybe on a one-on-one conversation in the future. But anyways, you put your money behind it, paid leads start coming out. You take money away from Google, the leads stop immediately, like no ifs, ands, or buts. So it can be a very simplistic way to maybe view this, but it's a good thing to start thinking about, at least. Or it's a good way to start thinking about it. But I also really don't want to promise the world with paid ads. And I know I'm using Google a lot as an example here. Facebook would be more or less interchangeable in a lot of this. Maybe some slightly different intents or campaigns that we can do there. But I don't want to promise the world here. Just to put this in perspective, going back to a beauty school example, the nationwide average cost for a cosmetology lead through Google Ads in 2019 was $125. So if you've got $1,000 a month to spend on Google, that's not even 10 extra leads a month. On the flip side, again, if you're converting at a 10% rate and that one extra enrollment, you're making enough money off the top that it covers your $1,000 spend right there, then maybe it's worth it to fill that seat, right? So you just have to have your expectations in the right place. I know for a lot of businesses, $1,000 a month feels like a really big budget. Like that's really putting them out there. And so they expect, because that's $1,000 they're putting out, that they're going to suddenly really change the game and change the market, change the industry in their market with $1,000 a month or 2,000 or 3,000. But to put it in perspective, you don't know that the school down the road or your competitor down the road, if you're not a school, is spending $25,000 per location per month. And we've got schools that are like that. And so you really need to put in perspective, because these ads it's all auction based, who's getting placed where and when and why. Someone with a $25,000 budget, they're never going to miss out on an auction. Everybody who searches for a plumber near them or cosmetology program near them, they're going to show up here, unless they've got someone in their market spending $100,000 a month, right? It's all relative. And so that's what you've got to understand. So again, I'm not saying this to dump on anybody's budget or what they can do financially, because that's obviously up to every business. I just want to make sure that it's very clear that just because what you're putting out there feels like a large investment, and you expect a ton of leads to come through. I expected 100 leads for $1,000. It just might not be realistic. And you got to make sure that you kind of get those terms from the agency that you're working with. And that's why I think it's important to work with agencies that specialize in your market, so that someone can come to you and tell you, you know what, we worked with hundreds of beauty schools or trade schools or home services. We work with a lot of home services as well. And we can say, like plumbers, et cetera. We can say, okay, on average, your program in a market your size, you could expect to see this cost per lead. And so this is what a budget you would need to hit those goals. And you can kind of strategically plan that way and set those expectations right. And that can be one of the biggest hurdles for any business that starts working with an agency. It's just having those expectations, not a line of, I expected this with this budget, but reality got me that. Doesn't mean it's a bad agency in a lot of cases. It just means that expectations weren't set correctly. And it can also take a second for an agency to learn your market before you start seeing results really incline. And so again, to go back to like giving them some runway, but making sure that that they understand the market that they're playing in. So I know we're running up on time. We got about 10 minutes left, and don't worry, we're going to be wrapping up here in just a second. I'm getting to the end of kind of going through some of these basics here. So again, still talking about paid ads. We'll talk about Google ads specifically. There's a lot of different types of ads you can do in different budgets that we would recommend. What I've had up on screen here for a second are what we'd call search ads. These are, you're bidding on keywords. And if you bid on that keyword, you have within a certain geographic area, say 20 miles around your brick and mortar business, you have the chance to show up in an auction, depending on what your competitors are doing. And this is intent based. So obviously anyone who's kind of bidding and playing in the search ad space, this is that faucet I talked about. This is people who are bottom of the funnel. They're more or less ready to convert right now. And it's going to be the best short-term solution for getting leads right out of the gate. That again, as you invest in organic, is only going to grow over time and how well it's able to perform, since there's so many variables that go into deciding how ads are shown. But there's also display ads, which here's some example. I'm sure lots of you have seen these on the sides of like news articles you're reading in the morning or blog posts that you're reading on other sites. These are display ads, which are, not so intent based. They might be brand awareness, just letting people know that you're an option out there. Here's an example of what some for Oozle might look like. People who've never heard of you before, or you could use them for remarketing. I'm sure, especially this holiday season, everybody on this webinar, I'm sure, has looked at something on Amazon, and then the next morning they saw a display ad like this in the sidebar of an article they were reading for the exact thing they were looking at on Amazon yesterday. And again, that's through those cookies, through those tracking pixels that they have installed. They know what you were looking at. They can remarket to you and hope to close the deal. And we can do that too. If anybody clicks on an ad, searches plumber near me or cosmetology school near me, and they don't convert, we might be able to get them back in a remarketing campaign using display ads, for example. Or I'm sure all of you are well aware of YouTube ads, which is also within the Google ecosystem. You'd run it just like you would any other PPC campaign. You could do stuff that are more lead generation. You could do demand generation, brand awareness, etc. But running ads on YouTube, and there's even a couple different types of ads that you can run within YouTube, whether they're mid-roll ads or they that play in the middle of a video that you're watching, or they start on the either end of the video at the end or at the beginning. Whether it's the 6-second unskippable, or like this one that was a little bit longer, you could skip it after 5 seconds, but it was a 30-second ad total. Lots of different things here. And I definitely recommend running at least some ads on Google, regardless of where your business is at, especially on your brand. You can protect your brand from other people who are waving signs and saying, hey, if you're looking for this business and they're using your name, you should check us out. Or, hey, we do this thing and we do it better. And they talk about some of the same things you do. You can do that, but in reverse. You can protect your brand name by bidding on keywords and not letting people get low-hanging fruit for someone that searches for your business specifically, if that makes sense. So at a minimum, I would be doing some brand protection campaigns on Google Ads. And if you can afford to do more than that, I would definitely recommend that as well. And then there's plenty of social media networks out there that you can also advertise on. Facebook, Instagram is usually where people start. It's where the most eyeballs are, but TikTok, Reddit, Twitter, LinkedIn, these are all social media platforms where you can advertise. These programs are an awesome way to get in front of a really hyper-targeted audience and drive a lot of eyeballs to your brand. They say it takes 7 marketing touches to get a conversion, which has been a saying in marketing since like the 60s. And maybe even before, but it's an old marketing term. It says marketing, it takes 7 marketing touches to get a conversion. And I think social media can play a great role in getting your first couple of touches and exposing people to your brand. And when you have enough content that's lower in the funnel and gets people more, gets you more direct with sales pitches and calls to action, you can really utilize those as a direct lead generation tool, to get additional organic leads, because they're ranking in Google for more general terms organically, or they can help drive what we called assisted leads earlier, people that are in the research part of the funnel. And you'll start to see a better return on your social media investment through pushing that content out and amplifying your message, that phase 4 that we kind of talked about. Similarly, the better your website performs and the better reputation and reviews you have, the better Google Ads and PPC is likely to perform. So if you're doing well organically and Google trusts you from an organic standpoint, they'll give you a little bump on your ads as well. And that's definitely a gross oversimplification of that, but it's a good foray into some of the things that, the rising tide lifts all boats. PPC generally gets more competitive, more expensive each year. It's important to realize that it can often take more spend gradually to maintain results, even if you're looking to grow. So, you'd need to spend even more if you're looking to grow your results year over year. And I think that's why steadily investing in organic and social and SEO on your website is so important, because it can help offset some of those costs by driving additional extra leads so that you don't need to spend more on PPC. And then just really in conclusion, to wrap this up, to really put a blunt staple in the end of this, if you're looking for a get rich quick scheme in digital marketing, I'm pretty confident in saying there's nothing really out there. And Ouzel's definitely not the partner for you on that end. It really does take time. It takes money. Like I said, that time and money. And frankly, I would be really wary of agencies who are making claims. There's going to be agencies who fare pretty well going into 2021 who are promising the world because they know there's a lot of pent up demand waiting once the vaccine's more widely available. And regardless of what they do, good or bad, is probably going to yield pretty good results for a lot of businesses next year. And so being wary on some of these basics and knowing the right questions to ask is going to be really important in knowing if you're spending your money in a way that's going to help you in a long term. Long-term organic investments, for example, with an agency like us that's putting out content, those are going to be benefits that you're reaping long after you've discontinued a relationship with us. The content that's on your website that's been brewing and building up authority over time is going to benefit whoever you're working with in the future. And that's awesome. That's exactly what we want. That's that ethical marketing that is just right. It's the right thing to do, and it helps businesses grow. And we have a lengthy and excellent webinar on our blog if you want to learn more about that talks about the differences between silver bullets and lead bullets. Silver bullets being kind of the get rich quick schemes, where it's the lead bullets being the little things that you can do that have the most impact over time. I just, in conclusion, want to say, if you're a business owner, make sure that your expectations are realistic. Make sure you partner with an agency who's transparent in their method and how they report and how they understand the spaces that they play in. And I think really, in my personal experience, in my years at Ouzel, the hundreds of businesses I've worked with, that pairing has made some of the most successful growth stories I've ever seen. To those of you who are current clients, I hope that this presentation connected some dots for you, or maybe answered some questions you were scared to ask. And to those who are wondering if we're the right partner for you, I'd like to think so. We've got hundreds of businesses under our belt that we've found the right combination of paid and organic strategies for that generate, steady and consistent growth for what I feel is a pretty reasonable price. Just to put a little pitch in there at the end. But do get in touch with us if you have any questions at all. If there's anything you're scared to ask, please don't be. You can reach us at info@ouzelmedia.com, and there's an excellent team that will make sure you're taken care of. Or if you just want to chat and ask additional questions, we don't have time for a Q&A today, which I usually like to do, but you can reach me directly at pdickens@ouzelmedia.com. Again, right there on the slide, pdickens@ouzelmedia.com. I'd love to chat just over email. Won't pitch you, just answer your questions and make sure you guys are feeling taken care of. So thank you so much for your time today. This was a lot of fun. I know we covered a ton of topics. While I probably answered some questions, probably made some things more confusing. So again, reach out, and thank you so much for your time today. Take care.